Is he a tall child? Immortal? The embodiment of chaotic evil? Or the man who murdered Princess Diana? That's up to ye.
And my dad pulled into the drive-thru, and we started cheering. And then he ordered one black coffee for himself.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 funniest times John Mulaney was funny.
The passwords have passed. You've correctly guessed. But now it's time for the robot test. I've devised a question no robot could ever answer. Which of these pictures does not have a stop sign in it?
For this list, we're looking exclusively at memorable moments from Mulaney's resplendent stand-up career, excluding his time on Saturday Night Live.
I mean a lot to a small group of people.
Number 10, a proud AsianAmerican woman.
And every time they banged the gong, all the kids sitting in front of me would stand up, turn to me, and bow like that. Which is some racist-ass bullshit, but also incredibly well-coordinated.
Childhood is full of merciless teasing from your peers, and Mulaney was no exception to that rule. His inherent geekiness aside, Mulaney was also scrutinized as an Asian American for a good chunk of his school life, despite being born to Irish Catholic parents.
When I was in grade school, I was bullied for being Asian American. And the biggest problem with that is that I am not Asian American.
Though, to be honest, it is hard to rebuff the visuals. Mulaney revels in recalling the relentless teasing for something so inaccurate, and how it informed his subsequent fear of 13-year-olds with their uncanny ability to go straight to the root of people's insecurities.
They'll just be like, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha, hey, look at that high-waisted man, he got feminine hips. And I'm like, no, that's the thing I'm sensitive about.
Fortunately, Mulaney is able to laugh about it now, and even take some pride in it when recalling being mistaken for a woman by a Blockbuster clerk over the phone.
I am a proud Asian American woman, and you will treat me with respect. I am a tiger mom.
Number 9, the Accidental Prostate Exam.
I went, oh.
The healthcare system is there for us to use, but not abuse. Mulaney learned that the hard way at a checkup when he attempted to fake symptoms to get his hands on a Xanax prescription.
Get to the front desk, and they have a why are you here sheet. And I want to pick something that will get me in and out really quickly. And I look down, and I see frequent urination. And I was like, perfect.
The lies he spins about extremely frequent urination land him in too deep in more ways than one.
Doctor looks at me and says, you're peeing 11 times a day. Then you may have something wrong with your prostate. So, what we need to do, some of you are ahead of me.
Unable to backtrack his deceit, Mulaney is robbed of his dignity following the invasive yet routine procedure and proceeds to black out during the follow-up blood test. Upon awakening, the doctor is gone, Mulaney is left with the eccentric nurse, and that window of opportunity is closed.
Sometimes I get nervous on airplanes. And Batman said, the doctor's gone!
It's probably for the best, and while it may not have helped his already high anxiety, Mulaney seems to have learned his lesson.
I'm sorry!
Number 8, can I walk you home? Everyone knows that one peer from college who went on to do big things. For Mulaney's parents, that person was former President Bill Clinton.
And also, my dad's a much more morally upright, conservative kind of guy. He always told me that he hated it in college that Bill Clinton could, quote, get away with anything. Can you imagine how he felt later?
And yes, he was Slick Willy back then too, frequently offering to walk his female classmates back to their dorms.
So my mom tells me that Bill Clinton would be out in front of the library every single night, just being like, hey, can I walk you home? Hey, can I walk you home?
Fascinated by his mother's stories of Bill's charisma, Mulaney can't help but ponder what might have been had his mother taken the opportunity a little further. Mulaney's entire special builds towards his own encounter with Clinton as a young boy at a fundraiser with his mother, and despite his father saying otherwise,
we have to go see Bill, and without looking up at her, my dad just says, why? It's not like he's gonna remember you.
The politician actually remembers Mrs. Mulaney fondly. And though we all know why, Mulaney puts it best.
Bill Clinton turns, looks at my mom, and says, hey, Ellen, because he never forgets a bitch, ever.
Number 7, the worst financial decision I ever made.
I went to college for the whole time. Holy shit, right?
Tuition is expensive, there is no getting around it, and Mulaney is neither a stranger to it nor able to shake off the injustice of it. The comedian recalls his college getting in touch with him and asking for charity.
We want a gift! But only if it's money!
And breaks down for his audience exactly how generous he'd been to them already.
So roughly speaking, I gave my college about $120,000. Okay? So you might say that I already gave them $120,000.
With repetitive emphasis, Mulaney goes over his exchange of 120 grand for an English degree and a string of miserable life experiences before laying into his fellow alumni who clearly peaked in college.
If you're an adult still giving money to your college is a $120,000 hooker, and you are an idiot who fell in love with her.
It's difficult to say it wasn't worth it. Mulaney has enjoyed a prolific career in the entertainment industry with no signs of slowing down, even if it did cost him $120,000.
How dare you clap for the worst financial decision I ever made in my life? I paid $120,000 for someone to tell me to go read Jane Austen, and then I didn't.
Number 6, real estate agents and children.
And they're always so excited to see you two.
As we've seen, Mulaney has not made his dislike of children a secret, and along with his wife, is still on the fence regarding having kids of their own. Mulaney muses on the ludicrosity of real estate television.
With 3 children and 9 on the way, and a max budget of $7, let's see what Lori Jo can do on this week's episode of You Don't Deserve a Beach House.
Then not so fondly remembers a time that he and his wife were viewing a potential new place, and the realtor made some presumptuous implications for their family future.
This is an on-fire garbage can. Could be a nursery.
Springboarding from that, he reflects on how awkward his interactions with young children have been. From babies that point to toddlers that haven't learned appropriate conversation yet.
Sometimes babies will point at me, and I don't care for that shit at all.
Though poking fun, Mulaney essentially gift wraps a comforting message that you don't necessarily need children to have a fulfilling family life. Number 5, the homeless guy.
Years ago, I was walking down the street, and a homeless guy came up to me, and he walked up to me and he pushed me like that.
Life in a big city can guarantee anyone a run-in with some strange characters and odd sorts, but for a comedian, these are blessings in disguise and ripe for harvesting material. With this in mind, Mulaney recalls his encounter with a homeless man on the streets, and the odd order in which he chose to list his characteristics.
Excuse me, I am homeless, I am gay, I have AIDS, I'm new in town.
As concerned as any would be with the irrelevant information he's been presented with, Mulaney proceeds to dissect this man's thought process with the masterful pedanticism he's known for.
Push him. And I'm gonna say, I'm new in town. No, hold back. Save it. Build to that.
What happened to the gentleman beyond their encounter remains a mystery. But based on what we were told, you can probably piece it together.
Like, I have a friend who's like, there's no single guys left in Manhattan. And I'm like, I know someone who's new in town. What are 3 other things about him?
Number 4, Detective Jayjay Bittenbinder.
By the way, Detective Jayjay Bittenbinder wore 3-piece suits. He also wore a pocket watch. 2 years in a row, he wore a cowboy hat. He also had a huge handlebar mustache.
Children's safety is a concern for any good school, but someone was a little too overzealous when they looked up Jayjay Bittenbinder.
Time for Street Smarts with Detective Jayjay Bittenbinder. Shut up, you're all gonna die. Street Smarts. That was the general tone.
Mulaney's school would host this eccentric violent crimes expert annually, and he would not hold back in making sure children knew exactly what to do when, not if, they're abducted, teaching them an assortment of skills.
That was a big thing with Bittenbinder, was throwing pedophiles off the rhythm.
The detective's advice clearly had an effect on young Mulaney, who as an adult is still terrified not only of abduction, but also the concept of secondary locations.
If I'm at a place, I never want to go to another place.
To make things worse, Bittenbinder got wind of Mulaney's original stand-up and was not overly impressed with him tarnishing his good name.
He was like, the 3-piece suits, yeah. I never wore the cowboy hat to schools.
Well, at least Mulaney knows how to distract him should their paths cross again.
You want it? Go get it.
Number 3, the one thing you can't replace.
And he says to me, "Hey, were you at my party on Saturday?" And I said, "No." You know, like a liar.
In a story that sounds like it came right out of a Judd Apatow movie, Mulaney chronicles a high school party at the house of one of his least favorite teachers while he was away, and the havoc that was inflicted in the name of that hate.
Another kid found out which room was Mr. McNamara's and went upstairs and took a shit on his computer. So the party was going great.
An army of drunk students proceeded to destroy the house. Though responsible for property damage and both provocation and evasion of police,
Scatter!
Mulaney discovers the worst thing that happened that night was something he wasn't even responsible for: the theft of antique family photographs.
And I had that thought that only blackout drunks and Steve Urkel can have. Did I do that?
It's only years later he discovers who the culprit actually was and the chaotic motivations behind it.
Why do you do this? And Alex said, "Because it's the one thing you can't replace."
We all know teens will absolutely drink underage if they can, but that's all kinds of evil. Number 2, a horse in a hospital.
It's like there's a horse loose in a hospital. I think eventually everything's gonna be okay, but I have no idea what's gonna happen next.
Every comedian has had something to say about Donald Trump and his presidency, but none describes the absurd uneasiness of life under this presidency as Mulaney's colorful analogy of Trump as a horse roaming around a hospital.
A horse used the elevator. I didn't know he knew how to do that.
Even with his own admission that he tries not to dabble in political affairs, he is still able to provide a creative commentary on Trump's administration, his supporters, his policies, and even the tensions with North Korea, all under the suitably absurd blanket of an animal wandering the halls of an infirmary with not a single clue as to what he's gonna do next.
And then 10 seconds later, the horse is like, "I'm gonna run towards the baby incubators and smash them with my hooves. I got nice hooves and a long tail. I'm a horse."
It is a masterclass on political comedy done well.
I go, "Hey, how come you opened the door for the horse?" And they go, "Well, the hospital was inefficient."
I mean, I know we all know this, but I love Mulaney's bit on Back to the Future, even though he's not the most on board with the movie. But anyway, let's look through some honorable mentions, or I guess they could be on fire garbage cans, before we get to our number 1 pick. Do you think it's your favorite? Let's see.
In terms of like instant relief, canceling plans is like heroin. I don't look older, I just look worse, I think. Honestly, when I'm walking down the street, no one's ever like, "Hey, look at that man." I think they're just like, "Whoa, that tall child looks terrible. Get some rest, tall child. You can't keep burning the candle at both ends."
Mick Jagger talked like this. He'd go, "Yes, no, yes." I pitched him a joke and he went, "Not funny."
You know, get away from my wife. No one talk to my wife. Marriage is gonna be very magical. I didn't kill my wife. That's like, ooh, who's that fella? I bet he did kill his wife. And when one feels like a duck, one is happy. And then Mary yelled, "Ooh, ducklings!" To which Mr. Finch replied, "Too old to be a duckling, quack, quack," and then walked into his office.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, the Salt and Pepper Diner.
So we put in $7 and selected 21 plays of Tom Jones's What's New Pussycat.
The simplest practical jokes are often the best, as demonstrated beautifully when a young John and his friend walked into a diner with a handful of coins and wreaked glorious anarchy.
The fourth time it plays, you're either thinking, "Whoa, Someone just played What's New Pussycat 4 times, or at least someone played it twice, and it's a really long song.
The two young boys queued up a seemingly endless cycle of plays of the Tom Jones classic What's New Pussycat before retreating to their booth to watch the confusion and anger unfold on the faces of fellow diners for the next hour.
And then, I don't know if you know this, but the song begins very quietly. Wah, wah, what's new, pussycat? And he goes, God damn it!
It's a harmless yet effective prank on its own, but the stroke of genius came with the decision to insert a single play of It's Not Unusual into the mix, feeding the victims with a false sense of hope that their nightmare was over.
Scientists have wondered, can you make grown men and women weep tears of joy by playing Tom Jones's It's Not Unusual? And the answer is yes, you can. Provided that it is preceded by 7 What's New Pussycats.
My, Mulaney. Why, Mulaney? Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.